It was just another regular day for David as he arrived at the hotel. He had a business trip in the city, and the hotel had come highly recommended by his colleagues. It was a luxurious 5-star hotel, and David was expecting a quiet evening before his big meeting the next day. He pulled his suitcase behind him, exhausted from his travels, and walked into the bright modern lobby. The hotel had a fresh, clean smell, with polished marble floors and sparkling chandeliers hanging overhead. The reception desk was busy, with a few guests checking in, but David didn't think much of it. He approached the desk, ready to check in and settle into his room. The receptionist, a middle-aged man with thick glasses, looked up and greeted him with a smile. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Starlight Hotel. How may I assist you today?" the receptionist asked politely. "I have a reservation under David Anderson," David replied, handing over his ID and the booking details. The receptionist quickly found his reservation on the system and handed him a keycard. "Here you go, Mr. Anderson. Your room is on the 12th floor, room 1207. Enjoy your stay." David thanked the man and made his way toward the elevator. He was tired but excited to finally relax. As he stepped into the elevator, he noticed the soft, classical music playing in the background. The hotel was elegant, and everything seemed perfect. The elevator doors opened to the 12th floor, and David stepped out into the hallway. The corridor was quiet, and the only sound was the soft click of his shoes against the floor. He walked down the hall to room 1207 and used his key to open the door. The room was just as luxurious as he had imagined. The king-size bed looked inviting, the curtains were drawn back to reveal a beautiful view of the city skyline, and the bathroom had a large soaking tub. David placed his suitcase on the bed and began to unpack. As he took his things out, he heard a soft knock on the door. He quickly walked over and opened it, expecting maybe a staff member with something he had forgotten to request. To his surprise, standing in the doorway was a young woman. She was tall, with soft, flowing black hair that cascaded over her shoulders. Her eyes were bright and green, like two shimmering jewels. She had a gentle smile on her face, but there was something about her that felt oddly familiar. She wore a simple uniform, with a name tag that read Zaya Room Service. "Hello, sir," she greeted him, her voice calm and sweet. "I'm Zaya, the cleaning staff. I just wanted to check if you needed anything else for your stay." David raised an eyebrow. He didn't remember requesting cleaning services. No, I'm fine, thank you." Zaya didn't seem surprised by his response. Instead, she continued smiling as if she had expected this. "I know this may sound strange, but I think I know you," she said softly. David blinked. "You do?" he asked, confused. "I don't think we've met before. She talking about?" He had never been married before, and certainly not to anyone who looked like her. There was a flicker of recognition in his mind, but he brushed it away as nonsense. It had to be a misunderstanding. "I think you're mistaken," David said, shaking his head. "Maybe you're confusing me with someone else." Zaya's eyes softened. "I know this is hard for you to accept," she said, stepping back slightly, "but the memories will come back to you. I promise you, David. We were connected in a way that no one else could understand, and I've been waiting for you." David's heart began to race, and a strange feeling washed over him. It was as if there was a deep connection between them, something he couldn't explain. He shook his head again, trying to clear his thoughts. Was he imagining things? Maybe he was just too tired after the long flight. "I think you should go," David said, his voice a little sharper than he intended. "I'm sure this is all a mix-up," Zaya nodded, her smile never faltering. "I understand," she said softly, "but I'll be here if you change your mind." She turned and walked down the hall, disappearing into the distance. David stood in the doorway for a moment, his mind racing. What had just happened? He felt a strange sense of loss, as if something important had slipped through his fingers, but that made no sense. He didn't know her. He had never seen her before. He closed the door and leaned against it, still trying to shake off the unsettling feeling. He tried to focus on his work, but the thoughts of Zaya lingered in his mind. Why did she seem so familiar? Why did he feel like he knew her? As he sat on the bed, David couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this wasn't the end of the story. There was more to this encounter than he could understand, and deep down he felt like the truth was waiting for him to uncover it. The next morning, David woke up feeling restless. The dream he had, or perhaps it was a memory, kept replaying in his mind. He remembered the hotel cleaner, Zaya, telling him that they were married. It didn't make sense, but there was something about the way she said it that made him feel uneasy, as if he had forgotten something important. He quickly shook off the thought and got ready for his business meeting. The hotel was nice, but his mind was somewhere else. He couldn't stop thinking about Zaya and the strange encounter. The idea of being married to an alien, even in another life, seemed impossible. But the more he thought about it, the more he felt a strange connection to her. It was as if his mind was trying to recall something, but it kept slipping away. After his meeting, David returned to his hotel room, hoping to relax. But as soon as he stepped inside, his eyes landed on the bed, and his thoughts once again turned to Zaya. What had she meant when she said, "We were married"? Was she telling the truth? He wanted to dismiss it, but his curiosity wouldn't let him. He picked up the phone and called the front desk. "Hello, this is David Anderson from room 1207, he said, trying to sound casual. "I was wondering if you could tell me who checked me into my room yesterday." The receptionist, a woman with a pleasant voice, replied, "Of course, Mr. Anderson. You checked in yourself yesterday afternoon. Is there anything else I can assist you with?" David frowned. That wasn't helpful. He had hoped to find some clue about Zaya or the strange claim she had made, but there was nothing. His mind kept racing as he hung up the phone, and he knew he needed answers. The next day, after another tiring day of meetings, David decided to take a walk around the hotel. He needed to clear his head. The corridors were quiet, and the soft hum of the air conditioning was the only sound that filled the space. As he passed by the rooms, he suddenly saw Zaya in the distance. She was holding a cleaning cart and pushing it down the hallway, but she stopped when she saw him. "David," she said, her voice calm. "You've been thinking about what I said, haven't you?" David's heart skipped a beat. "How did you know?" he asked, surprised. Zaya smiled softly, her green eyes holding an intensity that seemed to pierce through him. "I know you're struggling to understand," she said. "But trust me, the memories will come back. You just have to be open to them." David felt a wave of confusion wash over him. "I don't understand. I've never been married to you, Zia. I don't even remember you." Zaya stepped closer, her expression gentle but serious. "I know it's hard," she said, "but there are things about your past that you've forgotten, things you were meant to remember, and those memories are tied to me." David couldn't explain it, but her words felt strangely familiar. It was as if something deep inside him was slowly starting to awaken. He had never believed in the supernatural, but now he couldn't shake the feeling that something beyond the ordinary was happening. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Why am I the one who's forgotten everything?" Zaya hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. "Because you're not just anyone, David. You're someone special. You and I were part of something far bigger than you can imagine, and in every lifetime we're drawn together. That's why you feel this connection, even if you can't explain it. We've always been destined to find each other, no matter how much time passes." David felt a strange pull in his chest, like he was starting to remember something he never knew he had forgotten. His heart raced as his thoughts turned inward. He began to wonder if what she was saying could actually be true. The more he thought about it, the more everything seemed to make sense. The strange feeling when he first met her, the nagging sense of familiarity, it was all connected. "I don't know if I believe you, Zia," he said, his voice trembling. "But I don't know how to ignore this feeling either." Zaya smiled gently. "You don't have to believe me all at once. Just give it time. The truth will come to you, and when it does, you'll understand everything. But right now, you need to trust your heart." David nodded slowly. It was hard to explain, but part of him wanted to believe her. He didn't know why, but something about Zaya made him feel safe, like he had known her forever. And maybe he had, but he had no memory of it. He had no idea what was real anymore. Over the next few days, the strange feeling in David's chest only grew stronger. He couldn't stop thinking about Zaya and the things she had said. His mind was filled with flashes of memories that didn't quite make sense. He would be sitting in his room, and suddenly, he would remember a place, an alien landscape filled with strange plants and floating structures. He would remember holding hands with a woman who looked just like Zid, even during his meetings and business calls. Every time he saw Zaya, something in him felt pulled toward her. It wasn't just attraction, there was something deeper. He had only known her for a few days, but in those brief encounters, he felt like they had known each other for years, perhaps even longer. Her presence seemed to calm him, but it also stirred something inside him, something he couldn't quite name. One afternoon, after a particularly long meeting, David decided to take a break. He wandered the hotel looking for a place to clear his mind. He found himself at the hotel's garden area, a peaceful space with lush greenery and a small pond filled with fish. The place was empty, save for a few birds chirping in the trees. David sat on a bench, staring out at the water, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. He was lost in his thoughts when he heard the soft sound of footsteps behind him. He turned around and saw Zaya walking toward him, carrying a small bag. She looked as serene as ever, her green eyes locking onto his with a gentle smile. "David," she said, her voice soft and calm. "I was hoping I'd find you here." David stood up, his heart racing. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's okay," Zia interrupted, her tone warm. "I just wanted to talk to you. I know you've been struggling with everything. I can feel it." David sat back down on the bench, motioning for her to join him. "I don't know what to think anymore, Zaya. Every time I see you, it's like something is waking up inside of me. But then, I remember that you say we've been married, and I just don't get it. I've never been married. I've never met you before, not like this." Zaya sat down beside him, her presence soothing. She didn't seem in a hurry to answer him, as if she understood the weight of his confusion. She simply let him speak, her eyes filled with compassion. "I don't know how to explain it," Zaya finally said, her voice calm but firm. "But I know it's true. You and I were once connected. Our souls were bonded in a way that goes beyond time. You don't remember because it's been wiped from your mind, but the bond is still there. It's why you feel this connection to me, even if it doesn't make sense." David turned to look at her, his eyes wide. "But why don't I remember? If this is true, why can't I recall anything?" Zia's expression softened. "You were chosen to forget. The higher powers, the ones who controlled time and memory, made sure that your memories were erased. You had to live a different life, a new life. But now, when the time is right, your memories are starting to return, and with them, the truth of who we are." David felt his heart race as her words sank in. It was impossible, wasn't it? Everything about her seemed to challenge everything he knew about reality. How could he have been married to an alien in a past life? How could his soul be connected to hers across time? It didn't make sense, yet he couldn't deny the strange, almost overwhelming feeling of familiarity when he looked at her. "I don't know how to process this," David admitted, his voice quieter now. "How am I supposed to believe all of this? It's too much to take in." Zaya reached out and gently placed her hand on his, her touch warm and reassuring. "You don't have to understand it all at once," she said. "You just need to trust your heart. The memories will come back, David. You'll see things from the past. You'll understand everything, in time." David looked down at their hands, her fingers still lightly resting on his. He felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of calm that he hadn't experienced before. He hadn't even realized how much he needed reassurance, how lost he felt. But sitting there, with Zaya beside him, he felt like he was beginning to find his way again. "I can feel it," he whispered. "It's like a part of me is waking up. But I'm scared, Zaya. Scared that if I remember everything, it'll be too much to handle." Zaya nodded, understanding in her gaze. "It's okay to be scared. This is a lot to process. But you're not alone in this. I'm here for you, David, always." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the gentle rustling of leaves in the trees and the soft lapping of water in the pond. David felt something shift within him, a quiet realization that perhaps everything Zaya said wasn't so far-fetched after all. She was right. There was something about her, something deep within him, that felt familiar and real. Even if he couldn't fully understand it, he couldn't ignore the connection. Suddenly, David had a flash of memory. It wasn't a full picture, but it was enough to make him stop. He saw the two of them, Zia and himself, standing on a strange world. It was a battlefield, and they were fighting together. The images were fragmented, like pieces of a puzzle, but he could see their faces, their hands intertwined as they faced danger together. The bond between them was undeniable. He blinked, trying to hold on to the memory, but it slipped away as quickly as it had come. "I remember something," he said softly, his voice filled with wonder. "Just a glimpse. We were fighting together. I think we were in love." Zaya smiled, her eyes lighting up. "Yes, David. That's the beginning of it. Your memories are coming back." David nodded slowly, feeling a mixture of awe and fear. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: his life would never be the same again. And somehow, deep down, he knew he had to follow this path with Zia, even if it meant uncovering a past he wasn't ready to face. "Let's find out the rest together," he said quietly, looking into her eyes. David couldn't stop thinking about what had happened in the garden. The memory of the brief moment he'd shared with Zia, the flash of a past life. The feeling of love, and the deep connection kept replaying in his mind. Was it real? Was it just a figment of his imagination? Every time he tried to dismiss the thoughts, they kept coming back, stronger and more vivid. And Zaya, with her gentle presence and calming smile, made it harder to ignore the feelings bubbling up inside him. The next morning he decided to confront her again. He couldn't go on like this, feeling lost and confused. He needed to know the truth. After breakfast, David made his way to the hotel's common area, where he had seen Zaya a few times before. As he walked through the lobby, he noticed how quiet it was. The few guests that remained in the hotel were either in their rooms or out for the day. The calm atmosphere matched his mood, but inside him there was a storm brewing, one that he couldn't ignore any longer. He spotted Zia near the lobby entrance, organizing a small cart of supplies. When she saw him approaching, she smiled warmly, as if she had been expecting him. "David," she said softly, her voice filled with that familiar, soothing tone. "I knew you'd come. So, you're telling me that we were part of some kind of battle, that we fought together, and then someone made sure I forgot everything?" Zaya nodded, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Yes, we fought side by side. We were the last hope for our people. You were a soldier, but you were also my partner in a way that no one else could understand. We were supposed to save our worlds, but the mission was betrayed, and everything changed. We were separated. I was forced to watch as everything I knew was destroyed. But you were sent away to be protected, to start a new life. And for all this time, I've waited for you." David felt the weight of her words pressing down on him. His mind was swirling. A part of him wanted to run, to escape from the truth that was being thrust upon him. But another part of him felt a deep need to understand, to find out who he truly was and what had happened to him. "I don't know if I can believe all of this," he said, his voice trembling. "But why are you here now? Why did I end up in this hotel, and why are you working here?" Zaya looked at him with a softness that made his heart ache. "Because this is where we were meant to meet again. This hotel. This place. It's no coincidence. The universe has a way of bringing things together when the time is right. I have been waiting, watching over you in secret. And now that you're here, the memories are beginning to come back." David stared at her, his mind still racing on what happens now. "If what you're saying is true, if we were really together in another life, what does that mean for me now? For us?" Zia's eyes shone with a deep, knowing look. "It means that we can rebuild what was lost. It means that we can fight the forces that still seek to destroy us. You are not just any man, David, a hero, and you still have that strength in you. We can make things right again, together." David felt a shiver run down his spine. He had always considered himself an ordinary man, someone who worked a desk job, lived a normal life, and had no extraordinary talents or abilities. But the more Zaya spoke, the more he began to question everything he had ever known about himself. Was he really just an ordinary man, or was there something more, something he had forgotten but was meant to remember? He looked at Zaya, her presence both comforting and mysterious. "You really believe we can fix everything?" he asked quietly. "I do," Zaya said, her voice steady and filled with conviction. "You're not alone in this, David. We've been through so much together, and now, we have a chance to make things right. The universe brought us back together for a reason." David's heart was heavy with uncertainty, but at the same time, he felt something stirring inside him, feeling that he was meant to be here, at this moment, with Zaya. The more he listened to her, the more he began to trust her words. Maybe it was the connection they shared. Maybe it was the strange, familiar feelings that he couldn't explain. But whatever it was, David knew that his life had changed in a way he couldn't fully understand yet. "I don't know how all of this is going to turn out," David said, taking a deep breath, "but I'm willing to find out. With you." Zia smiled, a soft, relieved smile that made David's heart feel lighter. "Then we will face it all, together. And this time, nothing will tear us apart." The two of them stood there for a moment, the world around them feeling like it had shifted, like something had finally fallen into place. David still didn't have all the answers, but he knew one thing for sure: he was no longer alone. Zia was with him, and together, they would face whatever came next. And maybe, just maybe, they could rewrite the past and create a future they had always been meant to have. Days passed, and David and Zia continued to talk. Each conversation left David with more questions, but also a sense of clarity he hadn't felt before. Zaya had helped him understand so many things about their past, their connection, and the mission they had once shared. Yet, even as the pieces of his memories slowly began to fall into place, something felt off. There was a sense of danger in the air, a feeling that something was about to change. David had returned to his room after another long day when he noticed something strange. His phone, which had been silent for hours, suddenly buzzed with a message. He picked it up, expecting to find a work email or a message from a friend. Instead, the screen displayed a simple, ominous text. "They've found us." David's heart skipped a beat. He recognized the message for what it was, a warning. His eyes darted across the room, as if expecting something to happen. He quickly reached for his coat and headed out the door, heading toward the garden where he had last met with Zoe. As he stepped into the open area, he spotted Zoe waiting for him. Her face was serious, her posture tense. When she saw him approach, she didn't greet him as usual with a smile or a soft word. Instead, her eyes locked onto his with a look of urgency. "They're coming," she said, her voice low. "The ones who want to stop us." David's breath caught in his throat. He had heard the stories from Zaya about the enemies they had faced, but he had never truly understood the threat until now. "Who are they?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. Zaya's expression hardened. "They are a group of powerful beings from another galaxy, known as the Orcs. They believe that our connection is a threat to their control over the universe. We were meant to be a part of something greater, David, a force that could change everything. But the Orcs won't allow that. They'll do anything to stop us." David's mind raced as he processed what she was saying. The idea that the enemies had tracked them down to this hotel was terrifying, but it also made sense. Everything had been leading up to this moment. His memories, the strange sense of recognition, and now this message. It was all connected. They were in danger. "We need to leave," David said, his voice filled with determination. "Where do we go?" Zaya reached out and took his hand in hers, her grip strong. "We can't run, David. That's what they want. They want to control us, break us apart, but we can't let them. We have to fight back." David looked into her eyes and saw something he hadn't noticed before, an unwavering strength, a deep determination that matched his own. He knew Zaya wasn't afraid. She had faced so much more than he could imagine, and she was ready to face whatever came next. "How do we fight them?" David asked. Zaya smiled, a hint of her old confidence returning. "We don't need to fight them directly. We need to awaken the power within you, the strength you once had, the power that lies dormant in your soul. You were chosen, David. Together, we can stop them." David nodded, though the weight of the situation pressed heavily on his shoulders. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't trained to fight enemies from another galaxy. But Zaya was right. He had a part to play in all of this. A part of him had always known he was meant for something greater, and now, that purpose was clear. As they stood in the garden, the world around them seemed to shift. The soft rustling of the trees and the distant sounds of the city felt distant, as if the universe was holding its breath. David could feel something stir inside of him, a power he couldn't explain. It was as if the connection between him and Zaya was starting to awaken, filling him with a new sense of purpose. Suddenly, the air around them grew still, and the faint sound of footsteps reached their ears. David's heart raced as he turned to face the direction of the sound. He could feel it now, an energy, dark and threatening, moving closer. They weren't alone. "They've arrived," Zaya whispered, her voice steady but filled with warning. David turned to her, his eyes full of resolve. "What do we do now?" Zaya's grip on his hand tightened, and she stepped closer, her eyes shining with a fierce light. "Now, we fight. Now, we make our stand." Before David could say anything, the first of the Orcs appeared. They were tall, shadowy figures, their bodies cloaked in dark, flowing robes. Their faces were hidden beneath hoods, but their eyes glowed with a menacing red light. There were 5 of them in total, standing in a half circle around David and Zya. David instinctively stepped in front of Zaya, his heart pounding in his chest. The Orcs were unlike anything he had ever seen. They radiated power and malice, and the air around them seemed to crackle with dark energy. One of the Orcs stepped forward, his voice deep and cold. "You are the last of your kind," he said, his tone filled with disdain. "Your connection, your existence, is a threat. It must be ended." David felt a surge of anger rise within him. He didn't know how he could fight these beings, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let them harm Zaya. He wasn't going to let them destroy everything they had fought for. Zaya stepped forward, standing beside him, her posture unwavering. "We will not let you win," she said, her voice strong. "We are not alone, and we will fight for what is ours." David could feel the power building within him, the energy that had been dormant for so long now, beginning to awaken. He looked at Zaya, and in that moment, he knew that together, they were unstoppable, that the battle for their past and their future was about to begin. The Orcs stood around David and Zaya, their glowing eyes fixed on them like predators. The air was thick with tension, and every moment felt like it could snap. David's heart pounded in his chest. The power he had felt stir inside him was now growing stronger, but he wasn't sure what it meant. Was he ready to face these beings, who had come to end him and Zaya, the leader of the Orcs? the one with the deepest voice, stepped forward. "You think you can defy us?" he asked, his words like ice. "You are nothing compared to the forces we control. Your love, your connection, is insignificant." David stood tall, his hands clenched at his sides. Zaya, standing next to him, seemed calm but resolute. The two of them were linked, their souls connected in a way that David was just beginning to understand. "We will not let you destroy us," Zaya said, her voice firm. "What we share is more powerful than anything you can understand." The leader of the Verex narrowed his eyes. "You are nothing but rebels. Your bond is a threat to the balance of the universe. You should never have been allowed to remember. The memory of your past life must be wiped out, for good." David could feel his anger rise, but he pushed it down. He couldn't afford to lose control now. He had to focus. Zaya had told him that his true power lay in his ability to awaken the strength inside him. He didn't fully understand it yet, but he knew that he had a choice to make. They could fight, yes, but there was another way away that Zaya had hinted at in their talks, something deeper than physical strength. "What do you mean, balance of the universe?" David asked, his voice calm. Determined. "What gives you the right to decide that we don't belong together?" The Verex leader smiled coldly, his eyes flashing with arrogance. "We are the keepers of the universe's order. We make sure nothing upsets the natural. Of course, if things you and Zaya, your bond, threatens that order, you are anomalies that should not exist. If you continue to defy us, you will be erased completely." David's mind raced. Zaya had told him that the Virex wanted to keep control of the universe, that they didn't want beings like him and Zaya to challenge their power. But he was beginning to understand something more important. This wasn't just about control, it was about love, connection, and the strength that came from those bonds. The enemy believed they could destroy what they didn't understand, but David wasn't willing to let them take what was his. He turned to Zaya, his eyes meeting hers. There was no fear in her gaze, only trust. She believed in him, and in that moment, David realized that he had a choice. "You're right about one thing," David said, his voice growing stronger. "We are a threat, but not because of what you say. We're a threat because we love each other, and that's more powerful than anything you can control." The leader of the Verex's smile faded, replaced by a look of annoyance. "Foolish human," he sneered. "Your love will not save you. You will fall just like all the others." But David wasn't finished. He could feel the power inside him now, a deep, ancient energy that surged through his veins. It was the strength of their bond, the strength of his memories, and it was time to use it. Zaya stepped closer to him, her hand brushing his. "You can do this, David," she whispered. "Remember who you are. You've always had the power to fight back. Together, we're unstoppable." David took a deep breath, focusing on the energy within him. He closed his eyes, trying to call forth a power he had once known, the power that came from their shared past. Suddenly, a warmth spread through his chest, and his body hummed with energy. The memories he had started to recall, beside Zaya, their love, their sacrifices, began to fill him completely. The ground beneath his feet seemed to tremble, and David opened his eyes, his gaze now filled with purpose. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was something more, and he had a duty to protect what was his. With a deep breath, David raised his hand, and the energy inside him exploded outward. A powerful wave of force shot from him, knocking back the closest Virex. The air crackled with energy, and the other Virex hesitated, clearly shocked by the sudden shift in power. Zaya stood beside him, her hand resting on his arm, steady and sure. Together they stood against the Virex, their connection stronger than ever. The Virex were not just facing two people, they were facing something ancient, something powerful that even they could not comprehend. The Virex leader snarled, stepping back. "Impossible," he muttered, his voice trembling with anger. "You are not supposed to have this power. You should not be able to stand against us." David's gaze didn't waver. "We are not what you think. You can't control us. You can't destroy what's stronger than you." The Verex leader seemed to realize that the situation had changed. He raised his hands, and a dark, swirling energy began to form around him. "You have made a grave mistake, human. I will show you the true power of the Virex." But David wasn't afraid. He and Zaya were stronger together, and as the energy surged between them, David knew he had made the right choice. "Your mistake," David said, his voice firm, "was thinking that you could break us. We are more than just two people. We are a force." The air around them crackled with energy as David and Zaya joined their hands. The connection between them grew stronger, and the light from their combined power grew blinding. The Verex leader's attack faltered, his eyes wide with shock. David and Zaya were ready. The final choice had been made. They would not let fear or darkness stand in their way. The power of love, connection, and the truth of who they were would guide them forward. The blinding light that had filled the air slowly faded, leaving only a heavy silence behind. The Verrex, once so sure of their power, now stood frozen, stunned by the overwhelming force that had erupted from David and Zaya. The leader of the Verrex had attempted to strike, but now, he was struggling to regain control. David could feel the energy between him and Zaya, a deep bond that was unbreakable. They were more than just two people standing against an enemy. They were a force, and together, they were unstoppable. David looked over at Zaya, her face glowing with determination, and for the first time, he truly understood what she had meant. Their connection wasn't just a memory. It was a power that had been with them all along, waiting to be awakened. And now that it had been unleashed, there was no turning back. The Verrex leader took a step back, his glowing eyes narrowing as he realized they were not as powerless as he had believed. His hands clenched into fists, and the other Vorex behind him began to regroup, ready to make their next move. David, standing beside Zaya, felt the weight of the moment. He knew they couldn't just stop here. The fight wasn't over. They had come too far, and there was still so much at stake. "We have to finish this," Zaya whispered, her voice steady and calm despite the chaos around them. "We've come this far, David. We can't let them win." David nodded, his jaw set with resolve. He had never imagined that his life would lead him to a place like this, fighting against enemies from another galaxy. But standing here with Zaya, he felt a clarity he had never known before. This wasn't just about protecting themselves, it was about something greater, something that had been written in the stars long before they had ever met. The Verrex leader raised his hands again, this time summoning dark energy that swirled around him like a storm. "You think you can defeat us?" he growled. "We are the ones who control the universe. Your love, your power, it means nothing." David could feel the energy building within him, and he knew it was time to take a stand. He reached out for Zaya's hand, and their connection flared to life again, stronger than ever. "Our love is everything," he said, his voice steady but fierce, "and it's what will defeat you." With that, David and Zaya released the power within them, sending a surge of light and energy toward the Verrex. The dark energy that surrounded the leader of the Verrex began to dissipate, weakened by the force of their combined power. The Verrex leader roared in anger, his dark energy flickering, but he couldn't hold on any longer. "You cannot fight the love we share," Zaya said, her voice full of quiet strength. "It is the one thing you cannot control." The energy from David and Zaya grew brighter, pushing back against the Virex and forcing them to retreat. The leader of the Virex, his form beginning to crack under the pressure, shouted one final command, but it was too late. Their power had been broken, and the Virex began to fade, their dark forms dissolving into nothingness. David stood there, breathing heavily, as the last of the Virex vanished into the ether. The hotel garden, once filled with tension and fear, was now calm, the air still and peaceful once more. David and Zaya remained standing, their hands still intertwined, their hearts pounding with the aftershock of the battle. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. David was still processing what had just happened. He had fought against impossible odds, and now, it was over. The threat that had loomed over them had been vanquished. But it wasn't just the victory that filled him with relief, it was the realization that he wasn't alone anymore. He had Zaya, and together they had done something incredible. Zaya turned to him, her eyes filled with quiet admiration. "You did it," she said softly. "We did it." David smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. "I couldn't have done it without you." Zaya leaned in, resting her forehead against his. "You didn't have to. We've always been in this together." David closed his eyes for a moment, savoring the peaceful silence between them. The chaos, the battles, the fears, they were all behind them now. It was over, and what mattered now was the future. "I'm ready to start over," David said quietly, opening his eyes to look at her. "I'm ready to build a new life. With you." Zaya smiled, her face glowing with the same quiet strength that had carried them through the hardest moments. "And I'm ready to build it with you." Together, the weight that had been on David's shoulders for so long began to lift. They had fought for their love, their memories, and their future, and now, it was time to build that future. The past was behind them, but the future was full of endless possibilities, and no matter what came next, they would face it together. David looked at Zaya, his heart swelling with emotion. He had never imagined that he would find something like this love, connection, and purpose amidst the chaos of the universe. But now that he had found it, he knew it was worth everything. That as they stood together, the world around them seemed to come alive. The hotel garden, once a symbol of the battle they had fought, now seemed peaceful, filled with new beginnings. David and Zia walked hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Knowing that their bond was unbreakable, their journey wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. And together they would face whatever the universe had in store, knowing that their love and their strength would carry them through anything.